Hi Claire,
Hi, Steve.
thank you for joining us again on Art.friends.coffee. Coffee.
Thank you.
Today, we'd like you to just perhaps talk to us, for you to talk to us about the medium you use and why.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So I'm a oil and painting knife artist, and I work on canvas. It's a very exciting medium. If you haven't given it a whirl, I cannot highly recommend it enough. So I actually started working the method I do because prior to my oldest child being born 18 years ago, I worked with acrylic on perspex. And that method is, you can't leave it. It's extremely fast drying. And yeah, it's just very difficult. It's not having a young baby friendly. So when my old child was born, a couple of weeks later after he was born, I dug out the canvas, a table easel, oils, and a painting knife, and put it up on the kitchen counter. And I chose that because I could literally just wipe the knife with some kitchen roll and I'm good to go tend to the baby. So that's kind of how I got back into creating oils. I had done quite a lot when I was sort of pre-going to university. And I just fell in love all over again. It was just, it ticked all my happy boxes and I could be quite textural with it. And one of the reasons why that had taken so long is because of the expense of the medium. It's an expensive medium to paint.
Yeah,
The way that I paint,
yeah.
it's extremely layered. Well, not layered, but it's extremely textured. So it was having the audacity to actually go be a bit more sumptuous with it.
I
So
think that's really interesting though. So, I mean, because your style is unique. I don't see many artists painting as you do with a palette knife. Lots of tiny marks, all textured. Um, and by the way, that was perhaps a bit of a gloss over what actually is involved when you. I know it's very involved in terms of picking up different types of paint and carefully putting them down. It's incredible. For those of you watching at home, if you ever get a chance to see the Clare Law exhibition, I strongly recommend you go. And if she's there and the painting's dry, if you just have a quiet ask and say, "Look, do you mind if I touch it?" She might say yes. She did that to me. I was allowed to just feel the painting, and it's incredible. So very textured. Um, but I guess, sorry, back to what I was actually trying to say was it's incredible that you started off out of a need to paint and to look after a baby, and then it's evolved into this incredible work.
thank you.
Some of Claire's work, for those of you at home, are really large pieces that take a great deal of time to make, and they're incredible to look at, both up close and as you stand back from them. So um, yeah, I sort of see you as one of those artists that's found a found the niche and has worked hard at it for a number of years and has truly become an expert at what you do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it did take me quite a number of years because once I'd sort of started to uh, go back into oils, I was being quite textured. So I use a small painting knife. So this is an RGM 41 size. It's the only painting knife that I use, no matter how big or small my canvas is. And so this is an actual painting knife, sort of for anybody who doesn't know. This a painting knife has a neck that sort of comes down like this. And then whereas a palette knife is more straight, so which is fantastic for like mixing mediums and that sort of
Yeah,
thing, or if you're being very flat to the canvas. But for me, with my technique, I need to be really quite detailed and sort of get in there, which this sort of knife really enables me to do. And it hasn't got very strong pointed sides here, so it doesn't scratch into the pigment either, which is really, really important. And then my pigment that I use is the De La Rowney Georgian range, and this is obviously oil, and this is an absolute perfect consistency for me. So the water-based oils, they flatten out too much, so I don't add anything to this. It's just neat oil that I use, and it's absolutely perfect. But it is one of those things that I've over the years, it's getting to know my medium. I'm day in, day out, so I've learned different ways of different methods of being able to interpret the texture, which is a really important part of my work, to capture the texture as well as the hues and so forth. So so for sort of like doing like long grasses and things like that, sort of what I would do, I'll just show you on the palm of my hand, but I'd be picking up, say, a sap green and laying it on the palette. I'd be picking up some Cadmium yellow and then laying it next to it so it doesn't get blended. And then I would sort of like pull through the two pigments and then I roll it off, and then you pick it up again, and then that would go down for one blade of grass. So it's it's quite a slow process, but it's really enjoyable. The actual blending happens on the knife and onto the canvas, as opposed to on the palette. There'll be a little bit of blending, but most of it happens in action. And I have to be really careful, because I have to look at what's come up on the knife all the time, because it might be a case that actually there's something that's actually being produced that actually would be better suited somewhere else. So that's one of the reasons why it does take quite a long time. And sort of things like with water, sort of like I always sort of lay down like a very dark undertone. I learnt sort of like if you leave it about 2 or 3 days, so it's still wet, because I always work wet on wet, but you can then feed in the highlights as you go, and it's just got that little bit of tackiness just to get that little bit of grip with the pigments and things like that. So, but because it's it's a technique that I've created myself, so it's just that learning how will react to one another. How does the knife sort of work? What effects can I get? What are my limitations? How am I going to get around those limitations? So so it's a wonderful, exciting way of working. And I love sculpture. If I'm in an exhibition, well, we've both been around Delamore Arts together, haven't we, Steve?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Absolutely loved all the sculptures and things there. And I'm not a sculpture artist, trained as an illustrator, very much a 2D artist, but this is my way of sculpting, because it does feel sometimes the way you're actually having to get in and amongst all of the more detailed bits that actually, it's coming out of it. So yeah, it's wonderful.
That's brilliant. I'm so pleased you explained that. I mean, I knew some of it because we've spoken before, but yeah, I loved it. And it's I have to apologise. I've been calling it a palette knife, so I'll have to stop that now. And a painting knife, got that. But fascinating, lovely, and particularly lovely because it is a unique style. It's not like you're just talking through something that lots of people do. It's brilliant. So I live in hope that there might be a couple of beginner artists out there who watch this and go, I'm going to give that a go. And in 20 years' time, they'll be so fantastic, Claire, brilliant. Thanks so much for taking the time to explain that. And for those at home, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And we look forward to seeing you again in the next videos. If it was good for you, then please give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Steve. Bye.
Bye.